let's just start with a brief introduction, just to get the debate going today. I think that I think it's clear to us now that the proportion of electrical new vehicles sold is ever increasing. And the electric car market is probably the biggest growing markets that we've seen since cars, really. And those electric vehicles are, as they begin to populate our roads, the hydrocarbon powered vehicles obviously are going to eventually fade away into the background. What is particularly interesting is that we have an infrastructure issue to make sure that the transport driven by electric power will be able to charge at the right place and at the right time going forward. We do know that currently is that the rate of change probably isn't quick enough for the rate of change of the market. And one of the challenges for that is that the skills required to change, to look at putting in these installations, is probably going to become in great demand as we need to ramp up the number of installations that are required across the country. It's an interesting statistic when you think that in the last 30 days, only 821 chargers were installed, plus 100 rapid chargers installed, which if that's the current rate of growth, we would never be able to meet the requirements and the government policy for 2030, where we will start to see some level of dominance of electric vehicles in this country. So with that background, what I'd like to do is to change the slide and introduce this to our panel, who will help us to debate this issue. And we are absolutely spoilt with the people we have currently. Paula, can you change the slides? And the panel, let's start with the panel. So the panel that we have today is, let's introduce Abdul. Abdul is a senior policy advisor with the Energy Technology and Innovation at the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles. Abdul is a senior policy advisor and leads on safety at home and workplace charging point installation grant scheme for the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles. He has worked in a range of policy areas, including property and the built environment, infrastructure and competition. He is currently focused on safety of charging points infrastructure. So welcome, Abdul. We'll come to you shortly. Our next guest speaker is Luke Osborne. Luke Osborne is an energy and emerging technology solution advisor at the Electrical Contractors Association. Luke is an energy and emerging technology solution advisor for the ECA, and he leads trade association for the electro-technical sector. His work supports various organisations, including working on industry guidance and regulations. Luke was an apprentice into the industry and has worked in various sectors and run a renewable energy installation prior to joining the ECA. Welcome to you, Luke. My next guest panel speaker is Craig Mcdermer. He's an installation manager at Connect Curb Limited. Craig is a national installation manager, very much at the sharp end of the installations. He's EV charging and smart meter city businesses are his key function. He's actually there, and they are installing a significant number of outlets across the UK currently. Craig is an experienced electrician with a vast experience in renewable energy and EV installation. And finally, welcome Craig. And finally, I'd like to introduce Paul Nichols. Paul is a global technical lead EV charging at Shell Mobility Network Engineering. Paul has joined Shell Retail in 1998, holding a variety of both local and global roles across engineering. Paul is the Shell technology lead for EV globally and has hands-on from the day one developing EV charging engineering solutions, standards and processes to Shell. Shell markets globally on their EV journey to scale. Heavily involved in equipment selection, installation, integration, operations, maintenance, Paul is versed in the opportunities and challenges faced across the industry. And we would also like to recognise Paul as being one of the lead people who have been helping us to look at the skills requirements for the industry going forward in reflection of the installation of electrical vehicle installation. Right, so if we now move forward, we would like to now, I think, start the debate. So welcome all you guys. You can see that we are really spoiled to have these guys with us today. We'll open up the channel shortly and we'll see them all live. What we'd like to do is to start the debate. We have some key questions to ask these guys, and hopefully, as and when you would, if you as the audience would like to contribute to the questions, please use the chat channel, and I will check in from time to time with Paula so that we can you can ask the panel any particular areas you would like to question. So, Abdul, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to pick on you first, but it's quite an interesting area you work in. Clearly, a major government agency, and what we would like to really know is that, I mean, you've been responsible for issuing grants and supporting the installations for some time now, and there has been a changing grant focus. Do you think this will have any effect on the demand for people to buy into electrical charging points for their electric vehicles?
Thank you, Bill. First of all, I think I'd like to begin by painting a bit more of a positive picture of where we've got to so far and where we're going. So, I mean, if we look at the EVHS, for example, today, that's helped deliver 275,000 charge points in homes, and the workplace charging grants 23,000 charge points at homes. And then we also have ORCs, which delivered 4,600. And recognizing that the 2030 and 2035 targets are still quite challenging, I think we've made some strides to kind of support deployment of EVs with the deployment of charge points. I think also, oh, sorry, can you hear me better now? Hopefully, okay, great. Reflecting on kind of the changes to grants. I mean, grants are never really intended to last forever. They're typically designed to help a market get off the ground. And I think for domestic properties with off-street parking, it's done a very good job of doing that, and we've learned a lot of lessons in the process. But we're not taking away support altogether. We're shifting the focus to more challenging areas of the market. So the new version of the grants that will be coming on down the line will be focusing on rental properties and leasehold properties. They're kind of properties where the kind of ownership structures are a little bit more complex, and so require a little bit more support to be able to unlock delivery in those markets. But I think we've seen a very positive picture in terms of the purchase of EV vehicles. I think 1 in 6 vehicles bought so far in 2021 was an EV in some form or another. So I think the demand is there, and it will be driving a lot of installation work.
Thank you. As part of your responsibility, you carry out annual audits on the quality of the installation, and I believe to date, I think you've carried out 3 audits. And we do appreciate your current audit isn't really complete yet, so it'd be very difficult to talk about the most current findings. But could you perhaps give us some indication about the lessons that you've learned from this program of installation and the investigation through your audit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a number of key lessons from the previous audits. One is that there's both general issues present in terms of charge point installations, and there are EV specific issues. So it's the issues that we're finding aren't specific to EVs. Another key bit of insight is it's not just about the new installs that go onto site. It's also about the existing installations. So existing distribution units, existing kind of supply equipment that installers are installing charge points into. So that's causing a bit of the issue to be a little bit more complicated. And then just reflecting on the kind of requirements and what we want. I think there is a need for a better understanding of the regulations around EV specific requirements, and that ties into the need for training and guidance material to support the kind of deployment to a standard and quality that we would all kind of expect and want and need to achieve to be able to meet our objectives in this area.
Okay, so you do see that there is a real requirement for upskilling, making sure people have got the right skills in the right place at the right time, effectively.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. I mean, there is a wide kind of array of findings from the previous audits. So it's not all doom and gloom, but there are some improvements that are needed, and we are working with industry and the sector to help deliver that.
Thank you, Abdul. That's really great. So this is there's one more questions I've got for you, and it's really about. In some ways, it's almost like we're chasing our tail at the fast rate of change in this sector. In particular, manufacturers will tend to want to do things their own way, car manufacturers, that is, which it should probably create some issues around standardization. I think standardization would be our friend in this context of installation, charging installation. Just recently, for instance, Volvo have introduced a wireless charging technology that they are testing currently. So what is OZE's view on how the introduction of new technologies impact on existing charging installers' ability to do their work competently?
I think we're generally positive of innovation. Like as you can imagine, we want manufacturers and we want industry to innovate and to develop. And we also recognize that innovation also comes with additional demands for training, additional demands for standards, and additional needs to upgrade regulations, particularly where they're possibly not up to date or not reflecting of the latest findings and latest conditions and situations. So in terms of our views, it's all about supporting the market, supporting the key stakeholders within the market, providing the insights that we gain and the ability that we have to be able to coordinate and facilitate dialogue. So yes, it is challenging, and yes, the pace of change is quite rapid and fast, and I think to a degree that's a desirable outcome. But also, yes, we are engaging quite proactively and positively with the industry and with the sector, and we are seeing the development and deployment of new standards and new practices and new guidances to be able to meet those challenges.
Thank you, Abdul. I mean, I must say this is a very exciting and positive time in transport, what we're going through. I just think it's like all these things. I guess we'll always get growing pains as we have to make such a significant change in the way that we do the transport. Before I move on to introduce Luke and ask a few more questions with him, is there any questions at all that's come up, Paula, that Abdul or?
Yeah, so there's a couple actually. So I'm going to just read one from Lynette. So she said that many households run more than one car, Have you got any analysis around whether the home infrastructure, e.g. electrical panels, will be able to cope with an increase in the need to charge electrical vehicles? This will be on top of other electrically draining technologies, including PV panels, etc.
So if I'm correct, that relates to the power draw for EVs and the introduction of new technologies such as battery storage or renewables. I think that there is a wider piece of work that we are doing across governments with the DNOs and the energy sector as a whole to look at that picture. It's not something that I have an answer for, but it is something that is being explored, and it is something that we do understand, particularly, as you can imagine, as we move towards things like vehicle to grid and smart demand side management and smart charge points. It's certainly something that we're mindful of.
Okay, and then there's just one more on a similar issue from Justin, and he says, following on from your existing comments on the existing installation, we are finding domestic EV points being supplied by tapping into the consumer unit tails and mounting a dedicated DB within the meter box enclosure. Is this now deemed an acceptable practice, or is there clear guidance given this prohibiting this practice? Sorry.
I think that's a technical matter.
Yeah, it was quite technical for me to read out, actually. So apologies.
It's certainly something that if these kind of questions that come up from industry, I'll leave it to my colleagues who are much more proficient in technical.
Well, can I ask if any of our colleagues can pick that up, perhaps Luke or Paul? Is there anything, or Craig? Could anyone give a relatively swift response to that? Or
was this on the use of insulation piercing on the meter tails?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that should really be discouraged because they can't safely be removed. So yeah, we have seen instances of these being put in, but yeah, that's not a safe and compliant installation.
Thanks, Luke. So that does that, I think. Yeah. Sorry.
And then just finally, and I think this is probably a nice segue into the older questions. Robert said, given the comments on the general issues being found during audits, what would be the minimum required level of competence that you think is necessary to carry out EV installation work, e.g. a qualified electrician with additional knowledge? So that, I think, is a nice segue, Bill, into the questions with the rest of the panel.
I think so. So yeah, I'd like to take that forward, actually, because it's almost spot centre to talking to Luke and asking his first question, really. So Luke, you've heard from OZEF, and the questions that are starting to come from our very technocrat audience we have today. Is there a need for industry to focus on the standard of skills when it comes to EV vehicle charging? I mean, what is the electrical industry currently doing to ensure that the electrical installers are suitably trained and skilled for installing electrical vehicle chargers? And the second part, I think, would help to cover off the question from the audience as well, is there anything else that can be done to mitigate the findings of the OZEF report about continuous improvement in skills?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us attend this. There's obviously a massive need to address the skills required for installing electric vehicle charge points, and there's a lot that industry is currently doing. There is the domestic electrical apprenticeship, which has been put together by an employer-led group, and that should soon, they're expecting it to soon be signed off, and within that, embedded within that, is specific training for electric vehicle charge points. So we know that new entrants that are coming through will already have this training and the skills and be ready to deliver once they enter industry. So that's reassuring. And obviously, there's people going through. It will take a few years to go through that process. But for existing qualified, trained, and competent installers, it's obviously encouraged for them to be doing the upskilling. Even though most domestic and small commercial electric vehicle charge points are essentially a radial circuit, there's specific nuances that come down that need to be considered. So it's really important that installers that are considering getting into this industry or may already be within this do have that specific training. And we do know some of the training that's out there is a bit dated, so we do welcome refreshed courses on this to take into account new technologies. Obviously, you've got vehicle to grid and load shifting, load capabilities that need to be considered going through. But essentially, it's making sure that, as one of the questions was cited there, like where they were asking what are the minimum requirements and competencies that need to be looked at. It's essential that people do have that core level of electrical understanding, because without having that, those skills cannot be built upon. And as we go to diversify into such a range of technologies going forward, so not just electric vehicle charge points, you've got the advances in solar PV, battery storage, and the whole energy integration. If you've got that core level of competency embedded in your workforce, they can easily then be upskilled to take on these different technologies and ensure that they're installed correctly and that they'll communicate and work in a flexible manner that we need.
Thank you. I mean, that was very comprehensive. Can I just ask you then, just a little bit, the same question in a slightly different context, is if you know the, how do you see the skills and knowledge of today's electrical installers fit into the UK goal of meeting the net zero carbon commitments by 2030? Do you think the industry could benefit from the updated standard and being able to have training and development very much aligned to the industry standard?
Yes, certainly. As I mentioned just now, there's lots of new technology. I say new technology, they're technologies that are gaining more pace. But at the heart of everything, to be able to install these correctly, you've got to have that core level of understanding and competency. But to be able to install these new technologies adequately and safely, they do need to, installers do need to be trained and competent in adding in these new technologies. So yeah, everything's advancing very quickly. It's really important that through the process of CPDing, so which is a new requirement in the EAS, that people do go through these processes of having these upskilled training. And by doing that, you will effectively get the smart and stable smart electricity grid that we need going forward. It's all about balancing, and it's all about making sure that everything interacts. And if you don't have the right people connecting and installing all these things, you're going to have an issue with the consumers not having things working correctly. So it's about confidence and safety, and yeah, above all, skills and training.
Thanks, Ed. So I think the last question for you before we open the floor from myself is that several reports have been commissioned recently, and they all seem to reveal that there is skills gaps and shortages for these type of technical people. Do you think that we are doing enough? You mentioned apprenticeships, and I guess there's skill up training as well, skill up training as well. But do you think we're currently doing enough so that we will be able to meet the challenges of the changeover timelines and volume of installations that's required? Great, Luke. Sorry.
That's okay. I think there's a lot more that can be done. There's the reason we have a historic shortfall in the electrical sector and lots of trades, to be honest. And trades in the UK are viewed quite dimly in comparison to other trades. So there's a mixed message there. In other countries, they're viewed quite highly, the role of the electrician and the engineer, etc., etc. But it's not down to lack of demand. The electrical apprenticeships are oversubscribed as it is. So it's pinch points further up the chain. So employment opportunities, ensuring that there's enough apprenticeships available and that there's enough opportunities and support for the employers to take on the apprentices as well. But even taking into account the figures that were cited in that Great Jobs report, saying that only 4% of people would be interested in moving into this sector, you would only need to take 1 in 70, 1 in 74, 1 in 71 of those persons surveyed in order to satisfy the 38,000 openings that are available. So there should be enough people willing to come through. It's just making sure the opportunities are there to enable them. So yeah, from my point of view, yeah, the demand's there. industry, government, and educating parents as well to ensure that they understand that this is a credible industry for their children to come into. Without the tens of thousands of pounds of debt that would be attributed through going through a degree process. And when we've, I'm sorry, I know I'm waffling. When we've actually spoken to people that are leaving school and at colleges, and we highlight the opportunities in this sector, so that it's not just cables and sockets, it's programming now, it's ensuring the smart compatibility, and showing them that through coming into this industry, they could be part of the solution to the problem of climate change. You do see a spark come on behind the eyes, for want of a better essentially.
Okay, thank you for that. I think this is an opportunity now for Paula to come in if there are any questions, particularly around the areas that Lucas has just covered for us.
Okay, so we've got one here from Lindsay. So Lindsay asks, having supported the skills shortage in smart meter installations, Ganymede have recently built a large training centre geared around upskilling 18th edition test and inspection electricians to become qualified EV installers. Our weekly scope to support the market will be quite significant. Her question is, how our businesses in the industry plan to engage with their installation engineers? Would you rather hire permanent staff that you can train in-house, or hire permanent staff that are pre-trained, or outsource your installations to a full service management company, or perhaps a mix of three?
Goodness gracious. I'm not sure if that's a good Luke question, actually. Luke, should I ask perhaps
good question.
Craig and this ask Paul perhaps to come in on this one, Craig?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in as well, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a great question. I think the easy answer is all three. I think it's going to be a mix. There's different technologies and there's different scales of issues that you have to solve and resolve. So definitely there's room for both. Yeah, and coming along my sort of direction. I do like the insourcing piece, to be honest. Whether that wins over at the end of the day, let's wait and see. But I think my general view is there is room for all three, and I think we need to have different solutions for different challenges and different opportunities.
Can I then just change that question slightly for Luke, actually? Being the Electrical Contractors Association, do you see it similar to Paul? Have you a view on that, how people will enter the industry, either as full-time employees or contracting into tendering in for work?
I think there is the option for both, to be honest. I'm a bit unsure on the context of the question, to be honest, as whether this is actually training people that have just done the smart meter installations and just the basic inspection and testing, because that's quite a narrow skill set that they will have. And I think it's, as I mentioned before, you need to have the full encompassing knowledge of electrical systems to be able to ensure the integration and the safe installation of everything. And by creating defined roles really doesn't make a fluid workforce that can be repurposed for a whole host of general safe activities. But like I say, I'm unsure on the context behind that question.
Okay. Well, perhaps there'll be a follow-up question on that to help with that. Okay. Is there any more from you, Paula, currently?
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of themes that are starting to emerge, which are quite common. So Robert asks about, does the industry have enough qualified instructors to provide the level of upskill training that is required? And then Lindsay comes back in again and says, in the house building industry, and I think this is a really important point, we are forecasting a massive skill shortage with our build plans over the next 5 years. We'll need an additional 848 electricians on top of those that we currently use. Does the industry know how many electricians that they have factoring in retirements and attrition, and have plans to work in the industry and specific sectors to develop and cover this crisis? I think is what we're saying here. This the skill shortfall.
I think I'm going to go back to you, Luke. I'm sorry, but I think that is a big picture across the electrical industry sector. So, could you respond?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll take the first one. First of all, do we have enough qualified instructors and trainers? I think we do need more, and we need more interaction with employers and companies that are particularly delivering the new technologies. because there could be a case where, or could be some cases where some of the installers may be towards the end of their career and possibly not too interested in some of the new technologies. I am generalising here, this isn't always the case, obviously. But in order to get the correct current knowledge out there, there is probably the need for more interaction with firms that are currently installing these technologies, just to aid the situation and also to put current knowledge out there.
Okay, is it any more at all, Paul? I'd like to move on if I can.
Yeah, there is just one more which can be dealt with quite quickly, just while we've got our experts here. So with the development of open devices, do you think this technology is becoming a plug and play device requiring minimal additional knowledge, or in fact it could be installed by persons with limited knowledge? Quite a technical question there.
Yeah, I'll take that one. No, I don't really think it's becoming a plug and play with open. I think open is a way round certain things, such as simultaneous touch issues out on the streets. But there's still a lot more knowledge behind it than just, simultaneous touch and earthing and stuff like that. Such things as, simultaneous touch issue is a main thing. If you're doing on the street, you make sure you're 2.5 meters away for simultaneous touch. You've also got what's included in the actual unit itself. Every unit is different. You have different manufacturers, and they have different types of protection needed for type B RCDs, type A RCDs. So no, I think there's more to it than just because open is taking over.
Okay, thank you for that, Craig. That's from a person at the coalface. That's quite a strong response.
Yeah,
so
that's all the questions for now, Bill. So yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
And it's now your turn, Craig. So thanks for jumping in just that little bit early. You are at the sharp end of these installations. You're doing it on a daily basis. You're a very successful company that's winning many curbside charging contracts and in-company charging facilities. You're doing extremely well. How challenging is it to get the right skill into your organisation that will enable you to be successful at delivering these contracts, do you feel? How are you finding it?
It is quite hard. Yes, it is quite hard to find someone with EV background. It's a fairly new business, although it has had a massive boom recently, and it will carry on to boom. There's not a great deal of electricians and people out there which have got the experience around it, have come across problems and ways to resolve them, had the lessons learned. But there's plenty of things obviously that will help that, such as new courses, apprenticeships. At the moment, at Connected Curb, we're working with New City College in Hackney, and we're going to do a workshop with their level 2 and their level 3 electricians, just to demonstrate our kit, demonstrate everything around the EV sector really, just so we can make sure we can kind of entice them really, because we have noticed there is a shortage.
Okay, thank you for that. Just looking at considering what Josef Abdul described about the lessons learned in the audit and the findings. For electrical fitters considering getting qualified to install EVs, what do you think it should be considered? Do you consider that they should be qualified electricians in the first instance to be able to carry out this level of work?
For me personally, yes. Yes, I do. I do think they do. I have been at hire companies and we have upskilled people, but it's a very long process to make sure that they are competent. On the question that came previously, this is a personal opinion, that, in meter installers, if you're upskilling meter installers, it is quite a long process to make sure that they are fully competent. There's a lot more to it in being an electrician, and there's a lot more competencies and regulations and experience. Experience is key for me. I think experience within the industry, people have to make mistakes almost to learn from their mistakes, and they gain their experience.
Thank you for that. I think we know that the people, the panel in particular, I have been looking at, or particularly the technical people here have been looking at what a good standard would look like for a qualified electrician to be upskilled. If that standard or competency was formally recognised, do you think it would benefit your organisation moving forward as far as recruiting appropriate quality of staff into your business?
100%. 100%. I think it really would. Like I said in previous question, it is hard to find the right people, the right match, the people with the experience in the EV game, because it is fairly new. You know, at Connected Curb, we've got 5,000 installs to deploy this year, 20,000 the following year, and then by 2030 we'll have 190,000 car charger points in the ground. To deploy that, we're going to need, we need a good team. We need to have a good team, and we need to make sure we've got the right people to do it. And we're not cutting corners, because safety comes first. Safety is always first with Connected Curb. And yeah, I think if we had a governing kind of qualification that we could refer to, or if as soon as I saw that on a CV, I'd be very interested in that person, because I know that they know the regulations, they know the EV field, and I'd definitely be willing to speak to someone like that.
Thank you. That's very good. Thank you very much. Now, Paula, back to you. Is there any questions?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of things on that theme, which I'm just going to refer to. So Lindsay said, you mentioned it's tough to find people with an EV background. So what do you look for outside of that in a potential candidate? And she also goes on to say that in response to training domestic electricians, not smart meter installers, I use smart meter installers on an example on the volume of people we trained and deployed upwards of 800. And then the final one that Lynette's put in, she's put in, how will we ensure people can demonstrate their competence to install EV? Will they carry some sort of trade card, and who will audit? So really some nice common themes coming through here.
Definitely. The third question of how we prove competency, I suppose that would be down to City and Guilds themselves. If they came with a course, and then maybe we could get something like an ECS card, which would have that on. That would be my preference, definitely. What were the other questions? Sorry.
No. Another question.
Or was that just one?
I think it was around what you mentioned. It's tough to find good people with an EV background. So what do you look for outside of that in a potential candidate?
Potential candidates. Well, obviously it's quite varied, really. For me myself. It's more about attitude as well, and wanting to learn and be willing to learn. For myself, they'd need to be a qualified electrician with 18th edition. If they did the City and Guilds 2919, that's a brilliant start. Personally, I think the 2919 does need a refresh, and I would personally put some kind of practical in there. Practical is key for me. I think hands-on is the best way to learn. But they're the kind of things I've been looking for.
Thanks for that. And Nigel, kind of just going off that point slightly, raises a slightly different topic. So he says the problem just doesn't rest with electricians. We need to significantly upgrade the UK electricity distribution network, and we will need the DNOs to step up to the mark. Currently, their service levels are poor and slow, and we need them to make significant investment in their skilled resources. If we cannot get adequate power supply to the charge points, then there is a major issue. How can pressure be applied to the DNOs? Good question.
It's good, but perhaps I'd like to ask Paul so I know Paul's had some great dealings with the DNO. So would you like to comment on that, Paul?
Well, I'll comment, but whether I would like to comment is a different thing. Yeah, for sure. I mean, key part of the infrastructure that we all need to move together with, right? I mean, we're all on this journey, and we need to go at the same pace, of course. So I think building relationships with DNOs, helping them to understand our dynamics, so how many, where, when, is going to help build their delivery pipeline, how they need to scale up and ramp up. I think, there's other organizations, there's the IDNOs that you can also leverage as well. But it's a common theme, right? We want to do too much too quickly, and nobody's ready, right? That's the end of the game. But I think we need to work together. We need to try and give as much visibility of our plans and our expectations in a space which is moving. I mean, I can imagine being a DNO now is quite challenging, right? Not only we're coming out of renewables, we're coming now into wanted energy, very, very, a lot of it very, very close to us, right? In different forms. That, as you quite rightly said, and as Craig and Luke said, has not been invested in that sort of training. So, my medium voltage experience dates back to my work for the PSA, right? Which is, was privatized a long time back.
Yeah.
So, and to be honest, I never thought I would use that knowledge again, right? I never thought I'd be doing, selectivity studies and looking at substations and transformers and medium voltage switchgear and SF6. And that's a topic on itself, right? And that's so I can understand there is that niche there. At one end of the spectrum. What we need to do is to work together, right? I mean, that's the message, and be as visible and open as we can and understand their challenges, right? I mean, we are quite fortunate in the UK, right? I mean, we've got 7 DNOs. If you go to Germany, they got something like 900, right? It's a whole different challenge. So I'm quite is happy the right word? I'm quite relieved that we have good skills in that sector, quality organisations who are open and keen to work together. So,
thank you, Craig and Luke and Abdul. Is there anything you would like to add to that comment at all? Any one of you, Abdul?
Yeah. So I think I do agree with everything Paul said. One thing that
could you move the mic closer to you? Sorry, it's very faint.
Yeah. Sorry, I think Paul generally support everything that you've said in relation to DNOs. I've had quite a lot of interactions with the DNOs myself in this regard, and one of the things that they're finding quite challenging and quite difficult is to map out all of the assets that are going into the ground. I mean, there is a requirement that DNOs are notified, whether it's through building control or other means. And I think one of the things that they're finding is they're not necessarily being notified, and they're finding that there are charge points in areas where they're not expecting. So that brings them challenges for their ability to be able to kind of plan for it. And then also conversely, that also hearing from installers who are saying that DNOs aren't responding fast enough to calls for them to engage in areas of installation that only they have a legal kind of authority to access, and then that's gumming up the works. Now, there are potential solutions, and there are ways. There are things that there are proactive and positive conversations that are happening between installers and the installation sector and DNOs. And I think from a government perspective is to recognize what those conversations are, what those challenges are, and where we can provide support. So happy to consider any recommendations and suggestions that people have on this matter.
Thanks, Abdul. That's very generous. I think that I'm sure you will get some feedback after this event. So, okay. Before I move on to, sorry, Paul, is there any more before we wrap that up and move on?
So there's just one more, and it's around, would you recommend to differentiate the levels of skills and competencies of an electrician in relation to domestic electrical vehicle installations compared with commercial rapid charging installations?
Oh, can I start with Luke? Have you got an opinion? And then I'd like to go around the table actually, but just to mix it up a bit, Luke, would you like to start with that at all?
Yeah, well, I think we're probably coming on to that shortly, actually. Yeah, obviously there's distinct differences with the high-speed rapids. You're looking at dedicated DC charge points, etc., as opposed to the domestic and small commercial, where they are predominantly going to be single or three-phase AC installation. So there's a distinct difference in the designing criteria that will need to be considered.
Okay. Craig, would you like to also say, because I know it's a market area that you're also looking into?
Yeah, at Connecticut we do 7 kilowatts, 11 kilowatts, and 22, which are all AC. I know Paul will be doing, the bigger systems, and they'll be doing the DC. So yeah, I do see them as different sides of the spectrum, really. So yeah, I do think there should be more qualifications or a higher grade of qualifications for the bigger the chargers, really. In the DC, there's a lot more safety aspects and things like that that goes with DC chargers.
Okay. Paul, what about yourself?
Yeah, same really as Craig. I mean, you need to build on the core level and the core knowledge and understanding. We're in a time where things are innovating quickly, and there's many, it's diverged. We've got many suppliers, lots of different equipment. So I think those builds of knowledge, even people that have that high-powered DC knowledge, still need to understand the differences across the equipment spectrum. So I would welcome that differentiation. Whether it's a significant challenge for the industry, we should discuss, right? How do you, because you don't want to reduce the amount of people that you can pull on, so you need to have enough skills and build those skills. I think that's the key thing. So I'd see an add-on package is what I would like to see.
So, and people being recognised for each level of package that they hold. I mean, it came out earlier in a question. I think that seemed a very logical approach to be able to identify the skilled workforce going forward.
Certainly support that, Bill. I mean, that's down to you guys, isn't it? How you structure that.
We certainly would like to play our role in it, and we're certainly investing with you guys, by the industry, for the industry. So yes, absolutely. So thank you for that. It's time to move to you, Paul, if that's okay. I think it would really be nice because you are you are our only global representative here today, is perhaps to talk about the whole scale change, just as an introduction piece, really, for Shell. I'm sure I know you're very busy. You've been busy ever since the day I met you, which was a while back now. But can you go through what you see as any of the needs to change? What needs to change at all? Is there enough regulations? Is the industry need further development and training? Are these things that may stifle your organisation's business plans going forward if we can't resolve them effectively?
Okay. It's not like a doctor's surgery, which you promised me one question at a time, but we've got about four there.
Okay,
so I'll do my best. First of all, Bill, Paula, thank you very much for organising this and inviting me along. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for the attendees that are on the line. I feel like I'm between you and lunch, so hopefully I can be precise and yeah, thanks for coming. So I think the first question, what do I see? I mean, yeah, the energy transition is now in full flow, and the transportation sector has gone first, or fairly first, right? I mean, and that's a massive undertaking. And as I say, it's great being in the UK and being part of that and seeing it go probably first, right? Alongside Germany and in the Netherlands, for instance. It's been great to see, privileged to see in my position the speed at which this has taken off. That has surprised everyone. Even all our high-paid help that identify these opportunities in the pace at which they're going to go. It's outstripped every number that's been shared, and I'm sure it will continue to do so. And we have to keep pace with it, Bill. Right? We have to do our utmost to manage this this sort of scales between the need now and what's happening in the future, right? And the future is very short term. There's as I said, so many innovations that's happening on the equipment end. Then we've got the operations and the maintenance piece, and we need a workforce that can install this kit, right? I mean, you've gone very quickly from the academia piece that came up with the idea. Then it came into industry, and we've gone from sort of satellite systems with large engineering solutions now down to all-in-ones. We've opened up, as you say, charging on street. We've got home charging. We're now looking at depot charging. You've got bus charging. Is all the fleets start to on that journey as well, and it's a massive demand. So. I probably can't remember the exact question you asked me, but it is a challenge, right? And nothing like this I've ever seen before. And I am quite grey, so I've been around a bit. And I've seen, different trends and opportunities in the past, but nothing that everybody is grabbed hold of so quick. And I think we're all part of that, and we want to change things as quickly as we can, but we have to do it safely, right? We have to scale and ramp quickly but safely. And one of the fundamentals for me is to make sure that the workforce is there. We have that duty of care to make sure that we're all aware and trained. And me sat here working on this for the last 5 or 6 years, I'd probably see it from quite a different lens, right? And I want to try and help push this along as quickly as possible in the right direction. But Shell's fully behind, as you can see, the transition. It's great to have a company that's willing to put their money where their mouth is. As you see, we've pulled out hydrocarbons out of the site in Fulham. We've put pure EV back, and it's a statement to say this is where we're going, right? And we're fully behind it. So yeah.
And I guess it's going to be there is a business plan, and skills will always be one of the risk factors in those business plans, I suppose, going forward to get a timely resolution into the market, I suppose.
Yes, it's the key piece. As I said, the numbers increase, and we have to go and deliver, or you have to go and deliver, right? And if we don't have a strong chain, the weakest link in the chain shears, right? So we need to build, design. We need to build the supply chain of product and equipment. We need to build the capability and the capacity of the teams to put it in the ground. If one outstrips the other, we're all grounds to halt, right?
Okay.
I like the question. I like the question on the cross training. Right? I mean, that's a really good question. That's one that really we should, work together to find out how do you cross train people from allied industries. And I believe, there is a need to have certified and accredited electricians putting this stuff in the ground. I mean, we're talking of 1,000 up to 1,000 volts and 500 amps today. Tomorrow it's going to be even bigger, and there's only a couple of millimeters of plastic between our customers and that amount of energy. So it's a heightened risk, right? There's no new risks. I mean, electrocution, fire. There's nothing new. It's just there's more chance of getting it wrong because we have all these other dimensions at play.
That was very comprehensive, and I must say, I've got to say that all of our people here today have been working on what a new standard of skill standard would look like, and hopefully not too distant future we'll be able to share that with the wider industry. It certainly, I've got to thank all of the people here who have been in dialogue for a lot of time. And in particular, I'd like to thank Paul, who's championed the need for the right skills in the right place. So we would like to thank you for that, because we are just a facilitating body. We're nothing without the industry. I think that we would want to recognise that. So I think we're coming to a point where we'd really love some more questions from the audience, and I'm sure that Paul said quite a lot that's inspired some questions as well. So Paula, back to you.
Well, we don't have any questions following Paul's input, but only a comment from Justin, who was just reflected and said, "Well said, Paul. Great sentiments." But yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree. I think, Paul, you did kind of raise some really interesting comments there. So if anyone else got anything to raise, or even if you want to take yourself off mute, you can even say it off camera as well, on camera as well. So happy, Bill, I'm sure you're happy to do that as well.
Absolutely. If anybody would like to join in and
I mean, I can maybe share some of the challenges that we've seen, right? And then you can tell me how we close those, right? So I mean, as I say, we got this, I don't know, 50 odd different types of products that you could possibly deliver to meet 6 or 7 different use cases. And within that, you've got common themes. You've got to connect up, you've got to terminate. And I've seen difference in standards, in quality. I've seen challenges that have come over from not the best design, and I've seen, not the best workmanship piece. Right? And I'm probably not, alone in that. And of course, there are different drivers that we need to focus on. Yeah, I mean, and that's where I like to see, yeah, certainly help empower people to get it right. If we do nothing, then we're slowly going to slow down. We're going to have so many issues and incidents that, you know, we're going to get new regulations, right? So, you know, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have more regulations. What I'm saying is, look, what generally happens is, you know, the regulations follow tragedies and incidents and learnings. What we need to do is to be proactive, right? We need to think, look, we know a lot about this industry. We know where the risks are. We need to empower people, right? And we can put in barriers. We call them barriers, right? So what barriers do you put in? You know, the most effective barrier is a person, right? And if you really believe in barrier thinking, you need to invest in training that person. And that's why I'm so passionate about trying to get to the right position. Yeah, move from where we are in the right direction, help people get trained and accredited, create and shift the bar to a level where we don't learn from tragedy, right? We continue to share.
Okay. Does anybody want to follow up with those sentiments at all? Okay. Yes, Justin. I can see your hand, so please feel free to comment.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invite along. Some of the comments I made earlier on, please don't think that's out of some sort of negativity. I work in an industry that spans both the commercial and industrial installation work, and also working on the highway and public lighting. And in the public lighting field, I think prior to the advent of what has gone on in the last mostly 10 or 15 years with mass replacement of street lighting under PFI contracts, prior to that, in my experience in the industry, we'd come across two reverse polarities on street lighting columns. Since the advent of these PFI contracts, which are, again, similar to EV, is required a huge influx of labour and skills. Reverse polarities I've mostly seen 30 or 40 in the industry. So these are still lighting columns at the side of the road, which are live, and hence. But unfortunately, the same people in the industry working on street lighting are now working on contracts connecting EV chargers. And I'm sorry, Craig, this is not in your direction. This is from lighting companies, right, are using semi-skilled guys to bolt EV charging onto lighting columns. You know, and as Paul alluded to earlier on, the gas industry is heavily regulated, and rightly so, because when gas goes wrong, it is catastrophic and generally leads to loss of life. And I really do worry that we will have to see a number of fatalities before this industry gets really regulated on delivering it. As Paul said, like, these charges are getting bigger and bigger. And the information given by the actual manufacturers is woeful. I mean, for our experience, we've installed a 150 kilowatt ultra fast charger, and we were given absolutely no technical assistance whatsoever by the manufacturers, and we had to solve the problems on site. So yeah, yep. I mean, I'm not one for regulation's sake, but this industry, because of the lack of skills, I think are accepting a lower standard, and there is, like as Paul said, various drivers out there, i.e. get these units out there that they're getting installed ad hoc. There might be a badge up front covering the competence of the installing organisation, but the individuals installing them may not be fully qualified. Sorry, that's a bit of a rant over with there. Sorry if that's...
No, that's good. That's good, Justin. And thank you very much for opening up and sharing. Yeah, this is a risk, right? This is a threat. And that's the approach we need to have. And I'm a firm believer we need assurance as well. So when people put things in the ground, we need to find a way that the testing and commissioning is actually identifying any issues before we turn it on. Yeah, so I think it's one of these bits of the training that I've been pushing Bill on as well. You know, how do we check what we put in the ground? Because most people focus on, you know, I've got the selectivity study, I've done the design, here's my calculations. You know, that's the easy bit. You know, firmly believe putting it in the ground safely and consistently every time is the key challenge. So, yeah, I'd love to think about how we can ensure the installs, are actually not just signed off, because I'm not into ticking the box, but how can you make sure that that QA is done, right? I mean, is it a picture? You know, I mean, it's actually with the DC stuff, the high powered stuff, you know, the site acceptance testing is, you know, it is a lot easier for us because it's an intelligent piece of kit, right? And it can tell you, I mean, it's got IMD, so it tells you if you've got any leakage. It doesn't charge. You've got all these interlocks. But yeah, I think as you come down the scale, and you mentioned the bit about the on street, yeah, we do need to find a way of having that surety for sure.
Craig, this must worry you as well as being a competent installer organisation. I mean, unfortunately, your reputation spread, and sometimes undeservedly. Does this worry you as an organisation?
Yeah, of course it does. It's, you know, your kit can be as good as anything, but it's the way it's installed. It is all about the way it's installed. It's like Justin, you were saying about the lamppost ones. Us at Connected Code, we don't do the lamppost charges. We actually do 7 kilowatts and onwards in the street, and not onto the lamppost. But I think this is where the O&M comes in as well. Operation and maintenance. You know, are you maintaining them? Are you going out every 6 months? Are you checking the RCBO, the RCDs every 6 months? Are you going out checking the units, checking around it, making sure it's not physically damaged? Or anything like, yeah, anything that could potentially cause hazard to any pedestrians or anyone on the street, really, and make sure it's in safe working order.
I think that's very right. I believe personally this equipment's going to have a tough life out there in the open world, and it needs that sort of reassurance. I mean, I know ECA is very much about standards and the right people doing this type of work. Luke, is there anything you'd like to add to this debate, this part of the debate?
Yeah, I think it's great that everyone seems to be on the same tact with it. So you've got to make sure that you have got people that have a thorough understanding, not just to be able to plug and play and connect things up. You need to be entirely competent, because people's lives could be at stake here. These devices aren't just in a cupboard in someone's house or under the stairs. These are being exposed to all manner of weather, the elements, and people interacting them. People that may look to abuse them because they're bored. So they need to, like you say, they need to be able to withstand a whole lot of things. And the fact that people will be relying on this equipment as well for their charging and their transportation adds more credence to ensuring that they are operated and maintained regularly. And we know there's a number of organisations looking at specifying a minimum uptime requirement for various charging stations. Because if people are becoming more and more reliant on these, and as we've now got such a higher adoption rate of EVs than we do have the deployment of EV charge points, ensuring that the ones that are out there are functional is critical.
Okay, Paula, can I just ask you, is there any further questions?
We've got some hands up.
Yeah, we have some hands up.
From Randall, and I think Abdul had his hand up before, but I can't see it up now. But yeah, maybe if we can go to Randall.
Randall?
Yeah,
right.
Hi, thanks very much. Yeah, I echo what Craig was saying earlier. I mean, reliability of the charging network is absolutely key. And one of the things we look at in my company is always catering for the idiot. Because if there's a way of doing something wrong, the idiot will come along and find it, and that jeopardizes your whole network right the way through. But one of the questions I was going to ask was, what is the opinion of why we have a skill shortage at the moment? I mean, obviously, electricians and engineers and that sort of stuff isn't very, arguably, a sexy trade that people want to go into at the moment. But in terms of EV charging, are we making it arguably too difficult for people to enter? Are we scaring people off before they even look at it because there's so many regulations? Now, obviously, we need the regulations because the voltages we are playing with. But how can we make it more appealing to the younger generation coming through and get those people involved with it?
Luke, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, okay. We know up until a couple of years ago, installers were still reticent on taking on the training to be able to install these. And we were still hearing people say, oh, we're not going to bother, electric vehicles aren't going to catch on. And time's proved itself. It takes, people need to be confident on taking that step to commit to the costs of training and take the time out of their business. But we're obviously, that's now been addressed and people know this is a steady work stream coming through. But for new entrants, like we said earlier, it's not for a lack of demand for people coming into trying to come into the industry. It's the pinch points on offering the apprenticeships and the placements after that. So we know the messaging does need to be cleaned up a little bit, that there are very good opportunities, and it's not just sockets, etc. It's all the smart bits and pieces, and that's a lot more interesting to the next generation coming through. So it is getting that message through more. But like I said, we don't have a lack of demand. We have a lack of capability on processing and providing those opportunities. And
would it be fair to say then that this is a growing industry? It's relatively new. Do people really understand the opportunities that are here? That even the current qualified electrotechnical skilled workforce, and maybe part of promoting this would see an uptake of more people being interested to pick up these additional skills to enter the sector, in this part of the sector. Do people think that that's probably part of it?
I mean, if I come in on that just quietly, because I used to be the PM for the Jaguar I-Pace, and I took that from concept through to final production and everything else. And it is an interesting scenario at the moment, because the predictions are that we're going to need about 280,000 charge points by 2030 with the massive uptake of EVs, and we're past the tipping point for that at the moment. So equate that back, we're meant to be installing about 2,000 charge points a month. When you look at the stats on ZapMap, and we're probably doing about 1,000 a month. So that we're getting further and further behind the drag curve as we're going through. Do we see much publicity at the moment on the benefits of EVs, TCOs and everything else? Probably not. And if they start publicizing that, then that will bring the benefits with the EV charging side coming in, because obviously the cars are going to need the charging side to carry them forward. So I think there's a whole lack of advertising and awareness across the entire industry, not just the charging side, but the EV side. And if we can get all that working, that may benefit us to get more people coming through saying, hey, that's a growing industry, we need to do that and get in that.
Because contractors are always looking for new doors to open,
exactly.
Whether it's small contractors or big contractors. And I'm just thinking that it feels like it's much more of a select club currently, when it should be a much bigger club.
Very much so.
And I just think that as far as the skills agenda is concerned, because I know a lot of the organisations that are picking up these contracts, they subcontract work out to third parties to carry out the actual final installation, the coalface. So I just think that that's part of the problem. I would hate to think that we want to dumb down the skills. I think what we need to do is introduce the opportunities to more skilled people.
So I think it's a great reflection by Randall. I'd like to see definitely the wider opportunity. So this should be a segue. I mean, you can use the buzzwords, but it should be a roadmap. People should understand where they could go with these skills, right? I mean, I don't think that's you got the opportunity. You got to step into lots of things in the future that are going to be happening, battery storage coming down the road. So there's great opportunity in this field for people to come in, and we need to attract people. And certainly I think starting now with the schools and the colleges would be something I think we should look at doing, right? I think it's a great point. We're not, are we? We're not flying the flag enough to pull people into this versus perhaps more software related industries.
Okay, thank you. We're coming very close to the end now, guys. Abdel, I didn't want to ignore you. You did have your hand up. Is there anything you want to say, either reflecting back on previous conversations or where we are currently with the conversation? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think just reflecting on the stuff that's been said is, I do get the sense, and I think it's also coming through the audits, that there is a need to improve the kind of skills. But I think we've also talked quite a bit about regulations and making sure that both skills of installers are assessed and their work themselves are assessed as well. I think I was going to pose a question to pretty much everyone, really, because I come from a slightly different background to you, and more of the regulations, standards, and policy side of things. So from the concerns that you have and that you've raised, where do you think the solutions are placed? So if there's if the standards aren't particularly right, where do you think that needs to change? the same kind of things in terms of checks of both the skills but also the work. Where do you think that solution is placed? And in your reflection and answer to the question, I think it would be that, based on your answers, maybe where I would want to look to explore those solutions.
Okay, did everyone catch that, or was it a bit?
So,
Sorry.
long story short, solutions to standard solutions to checks and competency and capability. Where are those solutions? Where do they lie? And where should, like from a government perspective, from policy and regulation perspective, where should I be looking?
That's a toughie, right? Is that tough questions are for you, Bill? What do you think?
Well, I
what does
think
everybody think? I don't want to dodge the question, but
well, I'll start the debate. This will probably be our final debate today. I think that what we need is we need clear requirements for people to work on this type of equipment. And I think if we can capture that from the experts of the industry, then we need to be able to recognise the people with those capabilities so we select the right people to do the right job. And I think that anything that government can do to help us to focus on that, I think it's got to be a good thing. So there you are. There's a starter for 10. You can shoot me down or you can support the comment. I'll leave it with you. So who would like to go first?
I'll jump in if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
I was going to say, I think the onus should be really on the awarding organisations to be the gatekeepers for ensuring that the right level of competency is attained before people do these upskilling courses. And then the certification bodies need to be verifying this. And then that solves quite a lot of the issues. So it's making sure that you've got that the installers have attained this level of competency required, the minimum level of competency before they do these courses. And on the annual or however many yearly checks that the certification bodies do, that's verified that it's still up to date. So that encourages people to make sure that they have gone through the CPD process and that they are skilled for the technologies that they're doing.
That's very good. And I'd just like to just add to that is that I think that we need the employers to make sure that those are the type of people that they want to recruit into their organisations to be able to carry out this work. You're protecting your own business and you're protecting the public. So that's a very strong comment from myself. Anyone would like to follow on that? Craig, anything at all?
I totally agree, to be honest, and us as Collective Curb as an employer, that's exactly what we look for. It's our name, it's our brand, it's everything to us, safety. And yeah, one fatality can change everything really. So, we just need to do everything in our power to stop any chance of that happening.
Right, I'm looking for some last comments. Really, is there anyone else that really wants to raise or to top off that comment at all? Justin, sorry, Abdul, did you get some indication of the type of thing you were wanting to hear, or?
Yeah, I think these are some of the avenues that we're already going down and looking at. I think. For me, a lot of the solutions that we're pursuing, particularly in respect to the audit findings and my general safety work, is very much long-term solutions, as in they will kind of mid to long-term. Sorry, so they're being deployed, and maybe 2 to 5 to 10 years down the line, we'll be in a better position. My worry and my challenge at the moment is what do we do in the short term as we're rapidly building up the capacity and we're still delivering, even though there is some ambiguity around maybe some standards or some regulations or lack of cover in certain areas. So whether that's through building control or through CPS or through whatever it might be. And yeah, essentially, I think we are on a positive trajectory in the long term. My worry is the short term, and yeah, and I think some of the comments that have been made so far is very positive in that mid to long term, but I think still short term is more worrying area.
Thank you very much, Abdul. Well, I think we're sort of just about run out of time.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say a few thank yous before we go. Can I say thank you to the panel, Craig, Luke, Paul, and Abdul, and also just to reflect on, they don't just turn up for panels, that they are very active in trying to make sure we get the right type of solution. And Sitting Guilds is a facilitator, and we want to support the right type of solution going forward. And can I also say thank you so much to our guests today, and the questions that you've all asked. I believe the quality has been extremely high, and I'm very grateful. And I'm sure that we'll be able to reference some of the comments and the richness of the conversation to help us to demonstrate that the industry does know what it wants, and we just need to continue to pull together and bring an infrastructure together to increase the skills that are needed for this particular industry, this part of the industry. So can I thank you all, and I'll leave it. Is there any last comments from anybody at all before we close this event?
So, just thank you, Bill, for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, and it's been our pleasure. So thank you very much. So we'll end it there, and we'll make sure that people get a copy of this so that you can use it for your own reference as well, because we have recorded it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.